It's always been hinted at that King Triton and Ursula were related in some way, and now it looks like Morgana could be added to that mythical mixture. The depth of their relationships seems endless after going over a couple of scenes and bloopers from sources like Once Upon a Time or The Little Mermaid 2, and thanks to endless fan theories, the connecting factor between the three characters has all but been solidified, and it looks like Ursula, Morgana, and Triton's long-standing sibling rivalry was likely created by the sins of their parents, and maybe even some favoritism. Even though the original film neglected to bring up that Ursula and King Triton were siblings, this fact has not only been solidified through other sources, but also showed us that Morgana was also a part of their dysfunctional family. The original draft for Disney's The Little Mermaid included an opening scene that had a longer, more fleshed out version of the movie's opening number, Fathoms Below. In that version of the song, the sailors singing specifically mention the fact that King Triton and Ursula were brother and sister. According to Ron Clements, the movie's co-writer, the scene was only shortened so that they could get into the story faster, and since then it's been argued whether or not their sibling relationship was supposed to be considered canon. And looking at other sources like the Broadway musical or The Little Mermaid 2, it's clear that the pair were meant to be siblings, which means that in one way or another, Triton was also related to Morgana. The straight-to-VHS sequel gave us a bit more backstory for Ursula and showed us that she also had a sister, Morgana, who ended up being the main antagonist of The Little Mermaid 2. Though they might not have been full-blood relatives, after breaking all of this down, it's very clear that the trio shared at least one, and in the case of Ursula and Morgana, both parents. The Little Mermaid on Broadway had some very eye-opening additions to their script that not only gave the iconic sea witch, Ursula, a deeper origin story, but also showed us proof that she was Triton's older sister. In a song that was added to the play titled I Want the Good Times Back, Ursula sang of their childhood together and how she and her brother Triton both were set to receive equal shares of the sea from their father Poseidon following his death.
When Titan was floating on his deathbed, he divvied up the kingdom into two.
According to the musical, this was when Triton was given his powerful trident and Ursula received the Nautilus shell that she used to steal Ariel's voice later on down the line. The two siblings were supposed to rule over the seven seas together, hence why they were given equal shares from their father, but instead, Triton banished Ursula from their kingdom after he discovered that she used dark magic, which caused Ursula to seek revenge on her brother, or at least that's Ursula's side of the story. Either way, her use of the word brother and the explanation she gave during her song only act as more proof that Ursula and Triton were related to one another. And actually, I Want the Good Times Back was also one of the first times that audience members outright heard their father's name, Poseidon. And that's not the only time fans heard their father's name. ABC's Once Upon a Time also made brief mention of Poseidon's name and hinted at the fact that he had more than one daughter. Ursula made her debut in Once Upon a Time's 4th season in the episode titled Heroes and Villains. It was after she first appeared in the show that we learned that Ursula was the daughter of the Greek god Poseidon. According to her character in the show, she is one of Poseidon's many daughters, which lines up perfectly with a few things. The first is that it practically makes it canon that Poseidon was Ursula's father. It's the second Disney-backed production to make that statement. And the second thing is that it opens up the door for Ursula to have a sister, who we know from The Little Mermaid 2 is named Morgana. And interestingly enough, in the song I Want the Good Times Back, there's no mention of Triton or Ursula's mother, only Poseidon as their father, which ends up actually solidifying the trio sibling theory even more, because it shows that although they had the same father, they could have actually had different mothers. But before we get into Morgana, there's an important point to make about the book Poor Unfortunate Soul, A Tale of the Sea Witch, and that's the fact that the author not only preserved that idea that Triton and Ursula were related, but also showed why it would have been possible for the two not to grow up together, a point that many skeptics use when attempting to disprove this theory. According to the book, for the first few years of her life, Ursula didn't live in the sea. Instead, she lived on the land with an adoptive human father, who took care of her. However, after the people in her town discovered that she wasn't a human, she ended up back in the sea and reunited with her estranged brother, Triton, who we later discover was the actual reason Ursula was abandoned on land and raised by a different family in the first place. Triton straight up tells Ursula in the book, "You were a vile thing. I left you adrift because I foresaw the monster you would become." This not only shows Triton's distaste for his sister and the point at which their rivalry started, but it fully explains why the two didn't grow up together, and even sets up an avenue for the possibility of Morgana being a part of this mess as well. We end up meeting Morgana in The Little Mermaid 2. She was the main antagonist of the movie and ended up being Ursula's younger younger sister, according to the film. The movie told us that Morgana and Ursula were full-blood relatives, meaning they shared a mother and a father, unlike Triton and Ursula, who only shared a father. Now, it might not have ever been mentioned in the movie, but their mother did actually have a name, which Walt Disney revealed was Aquarena, and apparently, Aquarena liked Morgana significantly less than her older sister Ursula. According to Morgana in The Little Mermaid 2, Ursula had more powerful abilities than she did. This caused Morgana to grow jealous of her sister, which she was heavily criticized for, and made her just as wrathful as Ursula had been. This was why Morgana swore to get vengeance for her sister Ursula by using Ariel's daughter to get the trident. Well, it was partially vengeance. The other part of it was an attempt to prove her superiority over her sister Ursula. Long story short, if Ursula was Triton's sister, which was proven by the Broadway play and mentioned in Serena Valentino's book, and Ursula was also Morgana's sister, as shown in The Little Mermaid 2, then that would mean that Triton and Morgana would have at least been half-siblings. And this makes even more sense when you zero in on the mythology surrounding Poseidon. Like many of the Greek gods and goddesses, Poseidon was, let's just use the word, promiscuous. It's believed that he had many lovers, both male and female, and with those lovers, he fathered many children. This, of course, included his son Triton, whom he had with his wife, Amphitrite. Amphitrite was portrayed as an ancient sea goddess, and she was just one of Poseidon's many partners. Though Morgana and Ursula aren't mentioned in the original Greek mythos, Disney clearly intended for Poseidon to be their father as well. This was why Ursula claimed that her father named her after another sea goddess in Once Upon a Time. It was a reference to Poseidon's relationship with Amphitrite in the lore that his character was based on. In fact, when The Little Mermaid on Broadway was touring around the country, they made a subtle yet clear change to their performance. The revised version of the musical replaced the song I Want the Good Times Back with a song titled Daddy's Little Angel. In this updated backstory for Ursula, she sang about being the youngest daughter out of 7 sisters.
I was number 7, born of 7 little girls. 7 little pearls, pretty as could be. Perfect to 18, all except for me.
And the struggles that she faced growing up as the only one in her family that wasn't considered beautiful. Through the song's lyrics, we learned how Poseidon truly felt about his daughter. He thought she was loathsome and disgusting, and to ease his guilt for ignoring her so much, he gave her the magical nautilus shell, which Ursula used to get rid of her sisters. The only family that she had left, according to this version of the story, was her younger brother, Triton, who quickly outshined her. Well, if Poseidon felt so disgusted with Ursula, there is a good chance that he felt the same way about Morgana, who had an octopus-like form similar to Ursula's, and maybe Triton adopted his father's behavior, as well as attitude towards his sisters. Yes, in this version, Ursula ends up taking out all of her sisters with her necklace, but what if Morgana survives somehow? This would be the perfect setup to Serena Valentino's novel that illustrates how and why none of the siblings grew up together. Instead of Triton getting rid of just Ursula as a baby, maybe he got rid of Morgana too. Or maybe Morgana went into hiding after Ursula attempted to kill all of her sisters. At this point, it depends on the timeline and when each of these events happened in the story. But either way, there are a plethora of avenues that could explain what caused the 3 to part ways after their parents died. Regardless, it's pretty clear that the 3 are in fact related, Triton being the son of Poseidon and Amphitrite, while Ursula and Morgana being daughters of Poseidon and Aquarena. Their reason for splitting up all depending on how the events of their familial story played out. But what do you think? Is there a connection between Triton, Ursula, and Morgana that goes deeper than just leadership disputes? Let us know in the comments down below.